folks, we're back again making another meal from our turkey. One of the things I love about how much money we can save when we cook like this is that we always have a little bit to share, and some of these home-cooked meals can really make a world of difference in an elder's life. And just like our children, the elders deserve to eat very well, and even if they get a few meals out of the week that are free of preservatives and fresh, all you have to do is take a little Rubbermaid or yogurt container and take a cup of this soup to one of your neighbors in your building, and I'm sure they'll really appreciate that. So tonight what we're doing is we're having a turkey pot pie. This is a great American comfort food. Everybody loves it. The ones at the store are full of chemicals. And I've got lots of versions of this that I make at home. Some of them are more complex than others. And then of course you can embellish and twist with your ingredients here and there. But today what we're going to do is my very quickest version of a turkey pot pie, because I'm in a hurry today and I need to get dinner on the table. First, we're going to start with this turkey. Remember when we cooked our turkey and I showed you how to properly roast a turkey to keep those juices on the inside? Well, we had a turkey dinner. We made some turkey soup. We've also made broth and a few other things. And I've still got this nice big pile of meat left. So I'm going to start to prep for my turkey pot pie just by chopping or cutting this meat into bite-sized pieces, just like what you'd see in a can of soup. Now, you don't have to be accurate or anything at all with any of this. I mean, anything that's bite-sized is going to work. Now, I'd like to share with you another technique that I often use in the kitchen. I keep as many pairs of scissors as I can in my kitchen because one's not enough. It just saves me so much time. And I just use the scissors for almost everything, like cutting meat. And if I'm really in a hurry, I mean, it just saves one more step. I pick it up, I chop it, and I throw it right in the pot. So I'm going to just keep doing that, and I'm going to take every piece of meat and I'm going to cut it or chop it with my knife, whichever works for you. So here we are, and I've got my turkey ready to go in my pie plate. You can see by looking at it without any of our vegetables, gravy, or crust, there's probably going to be enough for 2 pot pies here, which is great because what I'm going to do is feed one to everyone for dinner tonight and throw the other one in the freezer and pull it out next time I have to work late or somebody's without me and needs a home-cooked meal. So for now, we're just going to set this aside, and the next step we're going to do is we're going to make a little gravy. So we're going to make gravy from scratch. So let me show you. We have our turkey stock that we made in our previous segment. And I love to feed this to people because it's got such a great nutritional profile, especially for hair, skin, brain, eyes, and digestion. So I'm going to show you here on the counter, I'm going to put just a tiny bit of this broth in my pan with a wire whisk. And then I'm going to take some cornstarch. Once again, cornstarch is something, in my opinion, you want to only buy organic when it comes to cornstarch. Why? Because corn is nearly all genetically engineered. And if it's not certified organic, you can be sure it's genetically engineered. And I will not eat those things if I can avoid them. They're full of pesticides and they've got DNA from other species in them. I just don't want to be eating that things without knowing what's going to happen to my body. So I'm going to take my measuring spoons and I'm going to start with about a teaspoon of this organic cornstarch. Now, organic cornstarch is just a thickener. If you don't have cornstarch or you're allergic to corn, you can use wheat flour. But I like to use the cornstarch. It's got a finer texture. A little bit of it doesn't bother me. I'm just going to whisk this in. And I like to start small. This thickening effect works better when you start small. So once I get some basic mixing done, I'm going to take this over to the stove. I'm going to heat it up. And we need to bring it to a boil to get the gravy nice and thick. So let's go to the stove now to do that. Now I actually put another teaspoon of cornstarch in here, and you can see I've got about 1/3 of a cup, not much. Obviously that's not enough gravy. I want to tell you what I'm doing. This is just best technique. If you're in too big of a hurry, you can always just throw everything in at once, no biggie. But what I'm doing here is just getting a finer texture and that thickness by mixing this cornstarch in with a tiny bit. And I'm going to bring it to a boil. And then after it boils, I'm going to slowly pour the rest of my stock in. So you can see we're boiling. We've got some bubbles on the edge and we're getting thicker. And I'm just slowly drizzling this broth in. Now the trick with using cornstarch, or anything for that matter like flour as a thickener, is that it's not going to get thick for you until it boils and then cools down. So sometimes people make the mistake, they keep adding cornstarch, and then when it cools down, it's very, very, very stiff. But of course, if your gravy does not get thick, you need to either try to make sure that you came all the way to a rolling boil while stirring, and then maybe add a little more. All right, so I'm back from my stove top with my gravy, and I've just been over there at the stove slowly adding teaspoons or tablespoons of cornstarch to my 2 cups of broth. Now, just to give you an idea, I had 2 cups of broth and I added about 6 tablespoons of cornstarch. That's actually on the high side, and I'll tell you why, because this was really thin broth. So, you know, it's really something that is easier to just do 1 teaspoon or tablespoon at a time, depending on what you're working with, because you might start out with a very thick broth and those measurements might be clear off. So here's my gravy. I'm just going to put it right back in my dirty pot. No need to dirty extra dishes. I really want all my flavors to meld. Part of the secret of great tasting flavor in your dishes is to just get all those flavors to marry. So, you know, the more we can work with our spices and get those flavors in the same pot and smoking together and boiling together, the more we're going to get that great taste coming out. It's kind of the way a chicken soup or a turkey soup will taste better on the second day, because those flavors have had time to marry. So what I'm going to do, like I said, this is one of my quick versions. If I had lots of time, if I had tons of summer vegetables, I would do all this. I would use whatever we had in the garden. I would chop carrots by hand. But this just is a big bag of organic frozen vegetables. I save time and money by getting things like this at the box store. And these are going to be the vegetables in our pot pie, and I'm just putting them right in the gravy. That's going to give us some of that wedding of flavors here, and help to get these just mingled and pre-cooked a little bit before they go in the pot. I also want to say, with your gravy or whatever you're using for your sauce, you want to make sure you get that thickness on the stovetop before you start mixing your ingredients in. If your gravy is not thick, what you're going to wind up with is a runny pot pie. Now, they will still eat it and it will still taste good, but they'll say, "Why is it so runny, lovely?" And then you'll have to explain that your gravy wasn't thick enough. So just make sure you get that thickness on the stove. Another alternative that people use a lot in these kind of recipes is just a condensed can of cream of mushroom or cream of chicken soup. But once again, read the labels. You're going to be amazed if you start reading these labels and see all the neurotoxins that are in these prepackaged foods. Now, it's not just MSG that I want you to watch for, because we also have hydrolyzed yeast extract, autolyzed yeast extract, textured vegetable protein, and a whole bunch of other names that are essentially just other labels for the same type of product. They're all neurotoxins. They're very bad for your eyes, for your sense of smell and your sense of taste, as well as for your mind and your children's health. So we try and avoid those ingredients at all costs. In fact, if you're super motivated, you can always write those big companies and say, "Why do you put that in your soup?" Because the soup would be best without it. So I'm just going to let that cool off and mix together here. And once again, because we're limited on time, I'm going to use dry herbs. I've got a lot of these fresh and in the garden, but we're just in a hurry, so I'm using garlic powder. I used to be a stickler about only using fresh garlic, but now I like the prepackaged crushed and the powder. They both have different applications. Once again, parsley, one of my favorite herbs, so good for the kidneys, keeps you youthful. I've got it growing in the yard, but I'm in a hurry, so I'm using some dry. I'm going to mix those together. Now, this is dried onions. You can use this if you don't have time to chop an onion. I'm going to chop and saute an onion just because I want to today. And then this is another blend I use all the time. This is garlic mixed with herbs. So I'm actually going to use a little of this as well. Now, it's got sort of that bouquet garni flavor in it, where it's got some oregano, thyme, basil, and parsley. So it gives us a nice bouquet of herbal flavors. So mix that in with our gravy. Give us some flavor. And then, of course, we need our nutritious, delicious salt. Now, this is a mixture of real salt from Utah, which is a mined rock salt, and Himalayan pink salt, which is also a mined rock salt. I'm really into salt. It's really good for you, but you need to be very conscious about where and how you get it. So I'm going to mix that into my gravy and vegetables. Now I'm going to take this meat back out of this pan and put it in here with my vegetables. So just take a peek as I make this quick and easy filling and say, you know, does that look like it needs more vegetables? I take a bite and see if it's too salty, not salty enough. What I love about these ones today is they're going to be really meaty, which everyone loves. Now you're probably wondering why I dirtied my pie pan with turkey if I'm making a pie, since the crust won't come out right in a dirty pan. And I gotta let you know, not only is this a time saver, but it's a great way if you want to cut out on a few carbs, or you've got some people in your household that don't like to eat a lot of carbs and some who really want the crust. This is one of my quick and easy ways. And what I'm using is some phyllo dough. So this is just a box of puff pastry. Once again, I've avoided the major mainstream brands because they have yucky, bad preservatives that I don't eat. But I found that at a health food store, and it's got nothing in it but butter and flour. That's good enough for me. So this is just one of my pieces of phyllo dough here. Now this is the exact same stuff you would use to make spanakopita, quick croissants, little hors d'oeuvres and things. And it comes in packages of 3, this particular brand. So this is just one of the rolls. And pastry and phyllo dough, they don't like to be frozen, refroze. What it does is it sort of cuts down on that flaky texture that people like so much. But it's not gonna, it doesn't make it inedible. It's just a tiny bit less flaky. So if I hadn't done that already by freezing and unfreezing, I could actually just pull this apart into a sheet and lay it right on top of my pie. But I'm going to have to roll it out because it did get a little wet in the defrosting. It's not going to pull apart for me. So we'll roll this out in a second, because what I'm going to do is put no crust on the bottom, and then I'm just going to use this puff pastry over the top. It's really delicious. It's almost like a French method, like a onion soup or something. And it's a beautiful, and the people that like crust, they can have tons of crust, and the people that don't like crust can just spoon out the filling from the middle. The nice thing about this is that I'm ready to go. I've got very minimal dirty dishes, very minimal prep, and all I need to do is fill this pie plate up with my filling. Okay, we're about ready to finish this quick and easy turkey pot pie. You can see this beautiful dish full of meat, herbs, and vegetables. I'm just going to set that aside. Like I said it previously, we just need to roll this phyllo dough out real quick because I got it stuck together in the freezer by freezing and unfreezing. So when you're making any kind of pastry or rolling out cookies, you always have to put flour on the counter. And then what works best is don't push too hard. You start out nice and gentle and go slow. You know, the finer the pastry, the slower you want to go, because if you push too hard, you lose more of that flakiness. And it doesn't take much to get something too thin, and then you've got to start all the way over again. Now my whole goal in this is just to get this phyllo dough big enough to cover the top of the pie. I'm going to have this beautiful puffy crust. Now of course, before we did any of this, we turned on the oven to preheat. And what temperature you're going to do this at really depends on how much time you have. Like I say, with a lot of these baked dishes and winter type dishes, if you're super in a hurry, you know, you can by all means turn up the oven up to 75 degrees higher than what you normally do. For instance, I would put the low for cooking a turkey or a pot pie or a pan of roasted vegetables at 325. And if you've got way less time, I would put the high at 450 or 425. So I've got the oven today at 375. When you get into the higher temperatures, you need to watch your tops a lot more, or even move the rack down one space. Just the rest of the meal will be fine, but with a delicate pastry crust like this, the last thing we want is for the top to get burnt on you. All right, so that's big enough. Now, like I say, this is my basic American pot pie. There are a million things you can do with this dish. If you want to go Spanish, you can add some smoked paprika, some chorizo. You can go Italian and do it with meatballs. Put lots of those green Italian herbs. There's a million other ways we can go. Now, my pastry's not sticking together perfectly, but that's okay. I'm just going to put it over the top. And then what we do is we go around the edges of the pie plate, and I'm going to pinch down on both sides. If you've got time, you can spend, 5 or 10 minutes and make this look super cute. But it's just for looks. And if you're in a hurry, just be proud you made a home-cooked meal. Okay, so there's our lovely crust. I'm going to take my butter knife and I'm just going to trim off the edge from the outside of the pie plate. Now, since everything in here that is dangerous food-wise is pre-cooked, it's not like baking a bird where you need to be sure that you've got that internal temperature and everything is fully cooked. So basically, as soon as your pastry looks good and everything's hot on the inside, you're done. So like I'm giving you guidelines for doing this at different temperatures since we're all so busy these days. So you're just going to have to check. With me at 375, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the oven for 45 minutes. There's a small chance I'll take it out a little bit before that, and there's a small chance I'll leave it in a little bit longer. And I'm ready to go. That's all I need to do. If you want your crust nice and shiny, then you take the extra step. You brush a little egg white on the outside or a little melted butter. Now we're probably going to get juices out that crack, but what you want to do is have at least one hole in the top, or you can do what the kids like to do and make a smiley face. But it's like when you cook a potato, you need a few holes in the top for the steam and the juices to be able to bubble over a little bit. And we're just going to put this in the oven just like this and let her cook. All right, look at this amazing homemade turkey pot pie. I know everyone's going to enjoy eating this for dinner tonight. This is just a great American traditional dish. And you know what? We took one $25 certified organic turkey and we fed 4 adults with that turkey with plenty of protein every night for a whole week. I hope that you've enjoyed these time and money saving tips that I've shared with you and that they enrich the nutrition that you're able to feed for yourself and your family. Thank you for joining me today, and until we meet again, live well with Dedra Seip.